The Dead Pixel Society is returning to the annual Dscoop Global Conference. We're once again hosting a Photo Imaging Connect mini conference track at Dscoop Edge St. Louis World Expo, May 7th through 10th, 2023 at the America Center, conveniently located in the heart of downtown St. Louis, Missouri. In addition to the excellent Dscoop education and networking program, there will be 4 45-minute sessions, 2 on Monday, May 8th, and 2 on Tuesday, May 9th, specific for the photo imaging segment. Go to photoimagingconnect.com for more information and to get a special $50 discount on your registration fee. Hope to see you in St. Louis in May.
Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Pageau. The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by Media Clip, Advertech Printing, and IP Labs.
Hello again and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Pageau, and today we're joined by a returning guest, Rick Bellamy, who is the managing partner of Inflecton and the executive chair of Dscoop. Hey, Rick, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Gary. How are you?
Doing great. Now, the last time you were on, you were the CEO of RPI and since have moved on to Inflecton. What is Inflecton and what does it do?
Inflecton is a consulting company that helps business owners, predominantly in the graphic arts, find their triple bottom line. And what is a triple bottom line? That's about putting your people first, so building a strong culture where that's diverse and put your people first. That is beneficial for the planet, so it takes climate action. And also does that in a way that grows profits, right? So at the end of the day, you're in business to grow profits. So why are those three things important? Well, we all know that as business leaders, it's been a real challenge to attract and retain the highest and best talent. And increasingly, the diversity of your group or of your company is helping to define your success, right? If everybody looks like you, you're not as successful. The second piece of that on the climate side, in today's environment, the climate and climate change is the number one challenge we have as a planet. And almost every consumer products company right now is focused on that. And there's a lot of misconceptions about the climate action that is possible within a business and how to do that in a way that improves your bottom line. And at the end of the day, we all want to improve our profitability too, right? You can't invest a lot of money in the first two unless you're making more money on the third. So it's all about triple bottom line for companies.
Well, it seems to me like a lot of the discussion in the past has been about profitability doesn't matter as long as we're saving the planet. What you're saying is you can have all three with a different approach.
And I think the three legs of the stool are critical, right? You must have all three legs of that stool if you're going to be successful in today's business environment.
Let's talk a little bit about what sustainability in the graphic arts world actually means, because there's a lot of different words out there. There's a lot of different phrases, a lot of different belief, like, recycling paper. Is that sustainability in process, or is that not what we're talking about? Is there an agreed upon industry definition for sustainability?
Boy, sustainability is such a big umbrella phrase, Gary. I like to break sustainability down into, as I said before, my triple bottom line, because without the people, you can't be sustainable. Without the climate action, you're clearly not going to be sustainable. Without profits, you're not sustainable. So I break it down into three. And so, many companies are using diversity, equity, and inclusion around one measurement of sustainability. My biggest focus right now is on climate action. So that's really carbon reduction, which I think applies in a big way to the graphic arts industry. So I'll focus my time there right now, because I think there's a lot of misconception about that. As you mentioned, hey, I'm recycling, so I'm sustainable, right?
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
no, it's more complicated than that. Uh,
Right.
well, I changed my light bulbs. I changed all my light bulbs to LEDs, so that's good, right? Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, that is good. But what was the impact?
Mhm.
So increasingly, when you think about the graphic arts industry, we're serving major consumer products brands.
Mhm.
We serve all the major brands in the world. We
Mhm.
produce their marketing materials, we produce their packaging, we produce their display materials. Increasingly, they are under pressure both from their customers, so the consumer,
Mhm.
who is increasingly looking at the climate action that you're taking as a brand,
Mhm.
and by regulatory requirements.
Mhm.
So, a lot of controversy around ESG and the environmental,
Mhm.
social, and governance reporting. But it's not a concept that's going away, and it's actually growing.
Mhm.
And in Europe, they're ahead of us on the regulation side.
Mhm.
So, as a graphic arts provider to a brand, most of these brands have started their journey, their climate action journey, several years ago,
Mhm.
and they're moving down this path. And what does that path mean? They are measuring their carbon footprint.
Mhm.
So, how much carbon is generated in my business
Mhm.
from sourcing materials, from my employees coming to work, from the energy that I'm burning,
Mhm.
from the way I operate my machinery, to
Mhm.
what am I throwing away and what am I recycling and what am I composting?
Mhm.
Um, all of these impact your carbon footprint.
Mhm.
And unless you have a baseline,
Mhm.
you don't know what your improvements are doing.
Right.
So this is the big change. We have, as an industry, been very focused on climate action for quite a while, right?
Mhm.
Recycling only made sense. Let's
Right.
recycle. Hey, you know what? I reduced my power bill, so it made sense for me to change my light bulbs.
Mhm.
The difference is now we have to measure it.
Mhm.
Now we need to say, my carbon footprint is 10 megatons a year.
Mhm.
How am I going to reduce it to 5? And then put in place a continuous improvement program that
Mhm.
allows you to say, okay, hey, I'm trying to get to 5 in a year. How,
Mhm.
how do I cut it in half?
What do you mean by carbon footprint? I mean, you hear that phrase a lot, but is there a way to just, give me one or two sentences where it explains what that actually means to the everyday business owner?
Carbon footprint is essentially the carbon that is utilized
Mhm.
to produce your services or products
Mhm.
and deliver them to your end customer.
But there's ways you can use X amount of carbon and then offset it with Y amount of carbon. So you have like net amount of carbon. Is that correct?
There are offsetting programs.
Okay.
So, and that is part of anybody's program, that there
Hmm.
are clearly ways to offset it. So let's give a good example. If I'm utilizing paper
Hmm.
as my substrate that I'm going to print on,
Hmm.
that's clearly made out of carbon, right? I am going to continue to print on paper, and that's going to be a carbon usage. I'm
Hmm.
not going to ever get that to zero. So how do I offset that?
Hmm.
I can offset that through biomass offsets,
Hmm.
so replanting forests, or
Hmm.
I can offset that through any of the carbon offsetting marketplaces, which are sequestering carbon in a
Hmm.
variety of ways, which I could go into a lot of detail, but I won't because it will bore everybody to death. There's a lot of controversy around carbon offsetting
Hmm.
because it is becoming a financially very lucrative space,
Hmm.
and carbon offsets are like a market.
Hmm.
They might be $1 today and $5 tomorrow.
Right.
They are moving up and down based on the viability and
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
cost of a project. So
Hmm.
we are, and I'll use Dscoop as a good example. At Dscoop, we are building a consortium right now to help them to build a sustainable future for their business. So, and we're doing that with practical steps. The first one is education.
Hmm.
Um, there's a lot of misconceptions about climate action. And so, hey, how do we educate our members to say, this is not unachievable.
Mhm.
This is the way you do it, and these are the partners you use. So we're building also collaborative partners to achieve this carbon neutrality that our members can utilize, because it is a complex subject. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
It's not a, hey, I'll just decide I'm going to do this and make it work. It's like, okay,
Right.
where do I start?
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, it sounds to me like it's needs to be part of your ongoing business process. It's not a project you tackle. It's now an integration into how you're going to be doing everything from ordering your office supplies on up to where you're sourcing your paper from.
Yep, exactly. No, it is. That's a good way to think about it. It's a change in mindset about how you do your business.
Now,
So yeah, it impacts every aspect of your business, from how your employees get to work, how often your salespeople travel, to where you source your materials, to where you source your power.
so you even factor that in. For example, let's say you have a printing plant in, we'll use St. Louis because that's where Dscoop is going to be, for example. And your average employee has to commute 20 miles, round trip a day.
Yep.
You have to factor that in to your business's carbon footprint, even though they're technically not on the job.
Yep. There's various ways to do it. You essentially just want to set a baseline, like any program.
Sure.
And there's a lot of carbon calculators out there. SGP is a good one, for example, which many people have heard about. Sustainable Green Printing Partnership. Carbon Quota has a good one. More and more are popping up. You input your data, everything from your power bill to where your materials are coming from and what they are, and it will create essentially your baseline. Is it perfect? No. The answer is no, it's not perfect, but it gives you a baseline. And then if you have an employee who says, oh, you know what, I'm riding my bike to work now 5 days a week. Great. Okay. You made progress. Or maybe you put in place a program that says, hey, I'm going to incent my employees to come to work in a different way.
Maybe carpool or something.
Yeah, exactly. Typically, that's not your highest impact. Typically, the highest impact is, hey, where are you getting your power? So I'll give a good example of a company in Europe. Company in Europe, as you know, with the invasion of Ukraine, oil prices and power prices exponentially increased in Europe. This company put solar panels and wind, and they power their building with wind and solar. They're not experiencing brownouts, and their power bill hasn't gone up. So they've increased their profits, and they're using fully renewable energy and cut their carbon footprint by, I think, 20%. So
nice. So it can be done.
Oh yeah. Another example is distributed print. By printing, a recent study done in Japan showed that by printing within 1 day ground of where your final product was delivering, you cut 60% of the carbon out of the delivery process.
Really?
Yep.
So what would be the prior method? Like, just let's say you had a central hub in, let's say, St. Louis, and you were shipping it to where I am in Michigan. That would be more carbon unfriendly than printing it in, let's say, Detroit and then sending it.
Precisely. So if you're 1 day ground, your paper is heavy. Shipping it via air freight takes a lot of carbon. So if you're shipping it with 1 day ground, it turns out you cut out a lot of that.
So in most cases, you're also delivering it faster too. So the benefit there would be, higher customer satisfaction, because they're getting their products faster with distributed print, and also we're getting a happier planet.
Exactly, and it's usually cheaper as well. So,
well, bottom line,
as I mentioned, it's a triple bottom line: happier people, better for the planet, and more money.
So, it seems to me some of the push for sustainability practices really comes like externally, like you said. A lot of the consumers are aware of it. They're looking for packaging. It's interesting how much commentary there is now. For example, if you watch YouTube unboxing videos, where part of the commentary is how much packaging is on this, is in this thing. This is way too much packaging for this kind of thing. So that's interesting. But
Yeah.
you and I have kind of talked about also there is sort of a cultural aspect from the marketing side where you're getting somebody maybe in a marketing position in a company who is looking to reach customers. And, they may, if they don't think that the process is sustainable, they may choose to do just TikTok videos or something.
Precisely. Yes. No. And that's a lot of people ask why is this important to the graphic arts industry? Hey Rick, you're on the West Coast, you're a tree hugger. So is that why? The answer is no. Every major brand is driving carbon reduction programs and diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in their business.
Mm-hmm.
They will choose their partners based on those that are also on that same journey with them, and they have to.
Mm-hmm.
So in the science-based target initiative, which is what most people are utilizing, there is a term called Scope 3. And Scope 3 is when you start to look at your suppliers and reducing carbon by having your suppliers reduce their carbon footprints. Many of these brands are now to that spot. So if I'm the marketing person or if I'm the person in charge of packaging, I now am required by my chief sustainability officer and by my marketing group to find partners who have a defined target that can be verified externally and have a program to reduce it. Mm-hmm. And whether that is reduced packaging, whether that is packaging that has an end-of-life strategy, displays that have a circularity strategy, mm-hmm. or marketing that has a zero footprint. Those are becoming a critical part of doing business. And those that are not on that path, I honestly believe are going to start to suffer in the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of pressure from the customers, whether it's the end user, the consumer, or the customers who mm-hmm. may be the businesses or brands who are doing this, that this is an important thing to them. So it better be important end users.
And consumers are showing overwhelmingly that they're willing to pay. Mm-hmm. They're making their choices in a very high percentage. I think a recent study I saw out of, I won't quote who it was because not sure, but I'll just say a major consulting company said over 50% of consumers were willing to pay more mm-hmm. for a product that was climate sustainable. Now, that comes into greenwashing. How do you define that?
Yeah, I've heard that phrase too. Can you explain what greenwashing is? Because that's not a good term.
Greenwashing is very bad. So greenwashing is a term that essentially means I'm going to create a nice marketing campaign mm-hmm. without the corresponding science-based targets behind it. Mm-hmm. And when consumers detect that, we'll just say it is a harsh and swift backlash. So it is much more important today than it was, say, a couple of years ago, mm-hmm. that you have real data about what you are doing and what that actual impact is, and that you are factual in your marketing of that. The great claims of, I've taken this step and so therefore I'm green. You need to be able to back that up, because otherwise you can get branded as greenwashing, which is a very bad thing. It's scary.
So I'm curious, is there a standardized format people can put things on a website that will say, other than a logo or something, like you said, if there's got to be respectable research or respectable formats to present this, is there a source for that in the printing and graphic arts community where it's something everybody can look at and everybody can understand? Because I can imagine there's a lot of variability in the data that could be presented.
There are a host of certifications in the graphic arts and printing world. All of them very specifically look at one segment of climate action. Mm-hmm. So there is not an overall, universally recognized logo or mm-hmm. certification that you can get yet. Mm-hmm. I think that there will be at some point in the near future. It's one of the reasons Dscoop is stepping in and building out this framework is not to create a new certification, but to lend credibility to the existing certifications and processes.
Sure.
And help business leaders pick the right partners that will help them on their journeys. Because it is a different way of doing business. It's a new mindset that impacts every aspect of your business. So, hey, who are the partners that I can trust? And then how do I communicate to my customers effectively and easily of the progress I'm making on my journey? And how do I externally verify that?
Yeah, because I think that is something where I think people would like to know is, you say you're making this progress. How do we know that's true if it's not just marketing speak?
Yeah. Well, increasingly external verification is required. And you're seeing that across many of the large companies. So every major audit firm out there right now has an ESG group. So everybody from PwC to you name it, everybody from PwC on has ESG groups for third-party auditing. There's also a variety of certification groups. I mentioned SGP before. They externally certify. FSC has an external certification around the materials side. There's nobody who's brought it all together yet. Short of the major audit firms, I think you will see an increase in that as it becomes more regulatory compliance focused, which will happen in the next year or two because of California in the US, already exists in Europe.
Well, this has all been very dry but interesting information. Let's talk about something a little more fun, which is Dscoop World Expo. Now, you're the executive chair of Dscoop. When is Dscoop and why is it going to be in St. Louis?
We are in St. Louis because it's in the middle of the country and it's a global expo. So we expect to have members from all over the world come into St. Louis. It is May 7th through the 9th it's the Dscoop Edge World Conference. We expect this to be the best Dscoop Edge event ever. We've got Magic Johnson as a keynote. We've got the drummer from Pink who does an incredible presentation applying what he does as a rock star into business. And we're going to have a host of education from everything from sustainability to how to be more effective in your business operations. So,
and just to throw a plug in, the Dead Pixel Society will be there with 4 of our own sessions, which you'll have already read about in the newsletter by the time you hear this. But on that standpoint, for someone who hasn't been to a Dscoop before, how is it different than other printing industry conferences? Because in my view, it is very different. It is, but I want you to explain to me why it is a different conference than, let's say, every other printing conference that's out there.
This is the real key differentiator. Dscoop is a community. We are not a trade show. Dscoop is a year-round community of PSPs and partners, supplier partners to the graphic arts industry. And what does that community really mean? It means we share with each other deeply what's working, what's not working. A big part of any Dscoop conference is the face-to-face conversations and friends you make. Some of my best friends and some of my best colleagues and some of my best information come out of my association with Dscoop. When I was running RPI, it was responsible for a big portion of my growth because it is a community. It's not when you think about going to any other trade show, you're wandering around trying to find equipment.
Exactly.
Sure. That's an interesting part of this conference as well, but that's not what it's about. It's about really getting information that helps you drive your business much more effectively.
And it is different rather than other events because it is almost all inclusive. I mean, the conference fee includes a lot of your meals, a lot of your parties, the receptions and things like that are all inclusive
Yep.
in that fee, which I like to mention to people when they see it, because it's not the $49, $99 badge fee type
Yep.
format. It is definitely more of an investment, but you will get more out of it, I think.
I think you get more out of it, and yes, to your point, we like to have fun as well. So there's a lot of food and a lot of libations.
Well, good. Well, listen, thank you, Rick, for your time and for your insight into sustainability and into Dscoop. Where can people go for more information about Inflecton and what you're doing in sustainability?
Well, of course, you can go to inflecton.com. It's inflection with only one I. So inflecton.com and reach out to me anytime as well. And then for Dscoop, please go to dscoop.com. You will get a lot of the information about our sustainable framework, as well as all of the other programs that we have for our members. So.
Well, thank you, Rick, and best wishes for continued success. And we look forward to seeing you in St. Louis.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.